Welcome to this breakout session at TfN's annual conference, where we're going to be discussing today putting passengers in the north first. My name is Salim Patel. I am the program manager working in the strategic rail team at TfN. I suppose I've kind of lived through the now infamous May 18, the new rolling stock delays taking a lot longer to arrive, those all clunky pacers flying around the network. But I'm assured now that they're all gone after they've, I suppose, too many years in service. So we've got plenty to talk about today. I'm really going to focus on what the passenger expects, as we absolutely should. And we want plenty of audience participation as well. So please do ask questions on the chat function and use the hashtag TFN2020. To help me through this discussion, I'm very lucky to have some fantastic guests joining me today. In no specific order, I've got leader of Leeds Council and co-author of Blake Jones Review, Councillor Judith Blake. I've got her co-author, former Rail Minister and the MP for Harrogate, Andrew Jones. Northern Train's very, very new Chief Operating Officer, Tricia Williams. And last but not least, the Director for Transport Focus, David Sidebottom. Each of the panelists will have a few minutes to say why this subject is so important to them, and also important to the rail industry as well. And then we'll dive into some of the meaty questions that I'm sure our audience wants to ask. So first up, we've got Councillor Judith Blake. Now, Judith was elected as the first ever female leader of Leeds City Council in May 2015, and she's the Council's Executive Board Member for Inclusive Growth and Culture. Councillor Blake also chairs a number of boards, including the Core Cities Group, the Local Government Children's Association's Children and Young People's Board, and I can honestly say we're very lucky as well that she represents West Yorkshire and the Transport for the North Board as well. So over to you, Judith.
Thank you, Salim, and it's great to be here today. And of course, Andrew and I feel as though we're on the tribute show, another chance to come on the blocks together, having worked together very closely. As Salim said, during the timetable chaos of starting in May 2018. It seems an incredibly long time ago, but the issues that came to the fore then are still very relevant now. Before I start, I really want to pay tribute to all of the staff working on the rail network right across the north, the incredible work that they've been doing over the last few months, really putting themselves out there as real frontline workers, and I don't think we can thank them enough. It's been a very, very difficult time for everyone. I think what came through with all of the fallout, if you like, from the timetable situation was just how important local accountability is, and the public need to know that they have someone they can go to talk about their travel needs and just how important it is. And what we know is that people depend on transport, public transport, if they use it to get to work on time, to go and see their loved ones. People can, get in touch and say they've lost their jobs because they have failed to get to work on time. And we saw that so much in 2018. What we know is that public transport plays a very important part in our economy. And we have to make sure that we can, go forward regarding transport as an essential public service. What we've seen with the COVID pandemic is really, I guess, a loss of confidence from the travelling public, obviously down to the fact that at the beginning, people were advised not to use public transport unless for essential reasons. And of course, what we know is that once people change their habits, it's very difficult to get them back. So all of us have got an incredibly serious job to do to make sure that we restore that confidence and put public transport back where it needs to be for the needs of the public as well. But also, if we're all going to achieve our ambition around climate emergency, public transport is absolutely central to our plans. What we've been doing at Transport for the North, where obviously we're looking forward to significant investment. And as a result of the Blake Jones review, I think people are now talking more about the travelling public, about considering their needs, about why they're travelling, how they're going to move from different modes of transport to achieve their end. And every new investment that we're making, we're now talking as a matter of course about accessibility, and where we're investing in new lines, for example, or doing up lines as the Trans-Pennine upgrade, talking about taking the opportunity to make sure that stations are fit for purpose, that every single person, if they want to travel, is able to do so in a dignified way. So absolutely critical that we take more notice of the people who use our transport systems, and rail is absolutely at the centre of that. But we have to make sure that we address the other modes of transport as well. Bus travel, integrated ticketing, all of those things that will make the journeys so much more attractive. We face a real challenge getting usage back to where it needs to be, but I believe we're up for it, and I think now we're all starting to talk in the same language and making sure that we address people's needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. We're going to go up to Andrew Jones next, MP for Harrogate. So Andrew, originally from Ilkley and educated locally at Bradford Grammar School. I live in Bradford, so I'm very close to me, and at Leeds University as well. Andrew lives in Harrogate. Before being elected as the MP for Harrogate and Knaresborough in 2010, Andrew worked in sales and marketing for Betty's and Tales of Harrogate and other international companies. Since becoming an MP, Andrew has held ministerial positions in the Department for Transport and Her Majesty's Treasury, and supportive roles with the Department of Health and Social Care. In 2020, Andrew was elected to chair of the all-party parliamentary group on infrastructure, and is a member of the following all-party parliamentary groups: Transport Across the North, Cricket, Apprenticeships and Equitable Life. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Andrew.
Well, thank you very much. That was an extremely fulsome CV introduction, so thank you indeed. I've got a few thoughts to make, I'd like to share with everybody, if that's okay here, and then really look forward to the questions. I echo Judith's comments about thanks to everybody who's worked in our transport sector to keep everything running during this very, very difficult year. They have done a great job. The principle of putting passengers first should be at the heart of all transport operations, and indeed the thought of putting customers first at the heart of every organisation. We of course know it has not always been so. Now there are many different elements to this question, and I'd like to just cover a few in a bit of an order really. As we rebound from the pandemic, we will need to be planning the shape of services. I don't think it is right to say that what was the shape of service before will be the shape after this pandemic. I think we have to therefore recognise that responsiveness to the changing environment will be critical, and we will only get that right if we spend our time talking to customers. Now, I'm somebody who spent many years trying to put capacity into the marketplace and succeeded to doing so, but much of that capacity, indeed all capacity, is moving air around our country. What will we need in the future? We cannot guarantee that the Treasury coffers will be there to move air forever. That really leads on to my next point, which is that we will have to win customers back. Putting the customer first means winning them back. Now, we have asked people to avoid public transport for perfectly rational, good health, safety reasons. But habits have changed. Good habits, using public transport, have been broken. So whilst there were legitimate concerns on health, and that will change as the vaccine is rolled out, we will have to get the messaging right about hygiene, about safety, to get passengers back on board. And to win them back, I think part of what we have to do is probably reflect that usage patterns will change, and therefore ticketing offers will have to change. There will be more working from home. Whether it sticks at this all home working, I think is pretty unlikely. I think what we'll probably see is 1 or 2 days per week working from home and more returns to the office. But the point of the ticketing offer has to reflect the customer need, and the customer need is changing quite comprehensively. And on a slightly different tack, we're in a time when the long-term role of infrastructure in spreading growth, and prosperity around the country is a message which has been bought by everybody. Obviously, it's a longer term question, but in this question, we are all passengers and customers, and the choices that we make in terms of priorities will be important. So what does all of this mean for TfN and the Blake-Jones review? Well, I think the first thing is that on the government agenda, which is about delivery of infrastructure and delivering it in a way which is also going to meet the decarbonising agenda, the North is critical. No progress in the North on delivery of infrastructure and decarbonisation will mean we won't hit the targets. We won't get anywhere unless we talk to passengers, listening to what they want and responding quickly. I have to say, sometimes TfN does come across as a little bit of a commentator rather than a player. That needs to change. But in terms of the Blake-Jones review, there were some underlying principles that Judith has mentioned. Accessibility, certainly, the passenger voice, local accountability, partnership working, information sharing, all of these principles which were to address the problems that had arisen in 2018 and would set up a much more responsive, engaged rail across the north of England. Those principles are still there, but they have to be used to address a different set of problems, the one that I've just been talking about. So it's an exciting time, but this is a time when we have to recognise the world has changed, listen to customers, respond, and get them back on board. Look forward to answering questions.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Very interesting. They're talking about how fares should reflect how potentially people might be working in the future. I thought that something I'm sure we'll explore a little bit later on. Next up, we've got, I'd like to introduce Tricia Williams, who's very recently joined as Chief Operating Officer for Northern Trains Limited. She'll tell you a little bit about her role there ever since she's joined. Previously, Tricia used to work for Manchester Airports Group. I think I've got that right, leading quite large diverse teams as well to achieve transformational change in performance and customer experience. So I'll hand over to you, Tricia.
Thank you. Yes, I started in Northern Trains Limited and in fact the rail industry only 2.5 months ago as Chief Operating Officer. And I've joined at what I think is an exciting and transformational time. Now Northern is directly owned by the government and a great opportunity really to reset and be focused on customer service and our passengers and providing a reliable service to them. And somebody mentioned Pacers earlier. The last couple of weeks we've seen the end of the Pacers and we've been seeing the introduction of our 100th new train. It's been a challenging time though, and I join at a challenging time from a COVID point of view, and that is a day-to-day, week-to-week challenge for us to manage our service and to manage things like training with COVID restrictions. And it is testimony to the local teams who are juggling those variables every day. And thank you very much for the other panellists for their thank yous to the team, certainly across Northern. They've been working throughout COVID and providing a very reliable service actually to key workers, school children, students, and those who have to travel for essential work. We've also had another timetable change yesterday. I think that's 6 now in the last 12 months. And we're now looking forward to future timetable changes when we don't fully understand what will happen to customer demand in a post-COVID world. My role at Northern is responsibility for the day-to-day operation of our train service. That includes everything from our engineering teams who are maintaining our train units through to all of the train crews, the station teams, to control and on-time performance. And my ambition is to ensure that all of those teams are aligned and that they are focused on delivering what is important to our customers. And I'm also responsible for the day-to-day relationship with key partners such as Network Rail and British Transport Police. So it's good to hear the word partnership being used by other panellists. That is something that I am totally focused on. There's bound to be trade-offs. But if we are putting customers at the heart of rail, then the trade-offs should ultimately result in a more predictable, reliable, safe and clean service. And we have to do that to ensure that we are attractive to customers. We want them to return and we want them to put their trust in us. Prior to joining Northern, you've mentioned there, I did work at Manchester Airport Group for 9 years, so some of you will know me there from my connections with Northern Powerhouse Partnership, so not totally new to transport. And my roles there, and I was also 20 years at United Utilities. I've spent in two types of career really. One is around the operational leadership of large diverse teams, providing a service to customers in very heavily regulated environments, and the other part of my career has been change and transformation to bring about better performance for customers. I'm really pleased to have joined Northern. Very encouraged by the campaign on Be Northern, Be You, which was launched recently, which is looking to create a more diverse workforce within Northern. And also we launched our customer panel last week. And again, that is for me very encouraging that we are out there listening to what customers want in a very changeable environment, shall we say. So happy to be here today and happy to be part of the panel.
Great, thank you, Tricia. And finally, David Sidebottom. So a man who needs no introduction really, but David joined Transport Focus in 2006 and has been Transport Focus's director since 2011. He's now responsible for Transport Focus's work for transport users across Northern England, Wales and Scotland. So over to you, David.
Thank you, Salim, and thank you for asking me to say a few words today. And I think obviously the focus of this session is very much about putting passengers first, and that's what Transport Focus is all about. Clearly in peace times, we were very keen this time a year ago looking at, there were some performance challenges on our rail network. We were looking forward to a new contractual arrangement for Northern. TransPennines new fleet was coming in, that was causing some issues, and then clearly on the bus side of things, we were looking forward to a UK strategy for rejuvenating bus services and obviously some of the work that the Metro Mayors have been looking at with greater control of local transport. And I think clearly some of those things have paused, some of those things have kind of slowed down a wee bit. But I think what's been interesting over the past 8-9 months is in listening to passengers, and Transport Focus's job is to listen to passengers and articulate that voice back to bodies like Transport for the North, to governments and to transport operators right across the country, is how it's still vitally important we deliver those basics, as Councillor Blake said and Andrew Jones have both said there. It's all about making sure that services are reliable, they're punctual. That's not gone away, and the work we're doing with passengers now very much supports that. But on top of that, now we've got some new dimensions for addressing passengers' priorities, and that's very much about cleanliness and feeling safe. That's very much COVID related. And I think the work we've been doing, we're asking 2,000 different people every week about their travel patterns, what they like, what they don't like. And we have seen this challenge. We talk about, confidence, it's about reassurance, I think, particularly as well. And that challenge of getting people back onto public transport when the time is right, when things reopen again so people can make more leisure journeys, but when hospitality opens up and tourism can get going again, perhaps next year. And I think what we're seeing is that people who are using trams and trains and buses now are broadly satisfied with the journey. It's a classic measure of satisfaction. Around 8 out of 10 bus passengers are happy with the service they're getting, and it's near 9 out of 10 rail passengers are happy with the service they're getting. And you asked the question about COVID and feeling safe at the moment. And again, I'm pleased to report that passengers who are using public transport are feeling pretty safe on our buses, trams and trains. That's good news, and it reflects a lot of the hard work that the frontline staff and the businesses and the authorities are doing to deliver that. However, what we are seeing is perception gap, and we're asking people who once used public transport and haven't used public transport for the last 8 or 9 months, if they were to make a journey by bus, tram or train now, that figure falls by half. Less than half of them would feel safe taking a journey on a tram, train or a bus. So there's something about reassuring people there's a lot of good work being done to make sure that the visibility of cleaning and the steps we're taking have to be done. But I think as we look to get people back into the workplace, get the economy going again and building back better, is delivering that confidence. And I think a big part of that, and I think certainly Andrew mentioned it, is what does the fares system look like, particularly on rail. We've seen bus actually introduce some pretty good stuff using technology to get ticket bundles, and I think there's a particular operator in the Harrogate area doing a lot of work to get ticket bundles back in place over the past few months. So again, it's incentivising people to use public transport, which is important. And we know that those people who commuted by rail 5 days a week are very, very unlikely to go back to using the annual season ticket in the future for the reasons Andrew stated. I suspect people will be travelling 2 and 3 days a week more than perhaps the 5 days. It's more that shift in that workplace. So we've got to be responsive. We've got to understand what our commuters and what our passengers of next year want, and build it around them. And then hopefully we can build their trust and confidence in the network. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, David. So we're going to dive into some questions now. So we really want to focus on the need to put passengers first when it comes to decisions around transport investment and changes, particularly with regards to rail. And with the anticipated Williams review, which itself is coming off the back of a submission on behalf of 2 of our panelists, the Blake Jones review. So the session really is about scoping how this can be done, and also how we can ensure that organisations such as Transport for the North can have a role in putting passengers' voices at the forefront of decision making. So I suppose diving into the first point, what would you like to see from the Williams review? And I suppose I'll go to Councillor Judith Blake first on that question.
Well, first of all, I'd like to see it published in full. I think we're still waiting for that. And then obviously a lot of the discussion from Williams has been around the governance, the franchises, all of those issues that actually circumstances have led to decisions being made because of the way that some of the train operators have found themselves. Basically, I think what we're discussing is really the need for more devolution, for decisions to be made more at a local level, recognising there needs to be obviously a national voice joining everything together, because you can't just bring everything down to a regional level. Transport doesn't respect borders and boundaries, so there has to be some real joined up thinking. So for me, and it's across so many areas of public policy, a real need for more genuine devolution, with more resource, importantly, coming down. We can't just have more responsibility and more functions without a real shift of resource, and therefore decision making coming out of Whitehall. I think in so many areas we know that England in particular is too centralised, and it's all of those issues that have really come to the fore over the last couple of years, that there needs to be that local accountability, and the route to achieving that is by more hands-on responsibility and powers being invested at a local level, so that locally elected politicians have far more of a say, and therefore able to reflect the voice of their local travelling public in the decisions that are made.
Thanks, Judith, and I absolutely agree with you in terms of wanting to see that published in full as soon as possible as well. David, any views on that, on the Williams review?
Yeah, I think just building on that point, I know that as part of our submission to the review process, the consultation process, which was probably a couple of years now, and I think it's important is this point about the passengers, and probably increasingly more so now taxpayers, as big shareholders in our railway, will want to see how some of the working out is done. I think that consultation part is that if we're looking at your periodic reviews and big investment plans for the future, is that passengers in an appropriate way can have their say, and it's understanding and getting that sort of out to communities and to passengers. So in a meaningful way, they can see the working out of the railway and the government, what is it that they're buying for the future, and then they're part of that exercise, and potentially some of the trade-offs again on that. So, making sure as well that delivery is focused very much on the passenger, and that they are they are measuring that. So, so levels of satisfaction with particular service or aspects of the service, and the passengers can see that kind of scorecard, that dashboard of performance, so that at least their investment and faith in the service is being repaid.
Thank you, David. And I can't remember, Andrew, if you were the Rail Minister when the Williams review was commissioned, so I suppose you can answer that question.
Well, the answer is yes, I was, is the answer. So that's a very straightforward question. I think there's a few points. Firstly, I think franchising has actually played a positive role with the rail industry over the last 25 years, in the sense that we've seen passenger numbers grow from, I think it was 760 million a year in 1995 to, before the pandemic, 1.8 billion. But at the same time, we had seen it become harder and harder to make the franchise system work. So it had helped us get from A to B. It was not clear at all that it was going to get us from B to C. And I think we can think about what happens next as a result. I think we're looking at some kind of, or judging by the noises, of some concession type system. Not sure how that will work and keep passengers at the centre of it. I think generally customer focused organisations are those who have a stake in the game and seek to grow their business. So quite how that will work, I'm not entirely sure, but it could work, I think. And Judith's point on devolution, certainly that is correct. I think as a general point within the UK, we do have a centralised system. We're moving away from it. It's been a longer term thing within government after government. You can see it in different parts of our public services. A voice from a local area should get you a better delivery of service because it will be more tailored to solve the local needs. However, we need, I think, to make sure that when we do have devolution, if we're going to have accountability, it also has to have responsibility. And that includes financial devolution. Otherwise, it's just the very simple, I need more, I need more, I need more. And quite frankly, that anybody can play that game in politics. We need to be much more canny than that as we plan the services of the future.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to move on to the next question. This one's really for Tricia. How much do you think COVID will affect the rail industry in the long term?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that. I think the challenges that we have faced in 2020 will certainly continue into 2021, and we may well feel the effects of the pandemic for several years as our customers have changed the way they work, and therefore that will impact the way they travel. And no one can yet be certain of that long-term impact, but I think there are some opportunities to learn from the pandemic that we need to build into our plans. For example, we've learned a lot about how to communicate with customers and how to respond to issues that they are particularly concerned about. Somebody mentioned before the need for people to feel safe and secure, and cleanliness needs to be right up there in terms of a priority. So actually being able to listen to our customers and respond swiftly in a very agile way, I think will be a positive. If anything can be a positive out of this environment, and keeping our own colleagues and other partners informed as well, I think has been a positive. We have been able to continue and in some cases accelerate the improvements we've made to stations, to car parks in those stations. And we've also piloted flexi tickets. So we've taken the opportunity that COVID has presented to trial some things that may not have been easy to trial in normal situations. But that being said, I think the main issue we need to concentrate on in a sort of a rail industry in the longer term, from a customer point of view and a post-COVID point of view, is really understanding how the demand has changed, either over the times of the day or over the days of the week. And that is in its very early stages, I would say, at this stage. And we probably have to work with a number of scenarios to inform our planning.
Thank you, Tricia. I suppose if we went for a quick fire, what do passengers want from the transport network now? And I'll go to each one of the panelists and ask for one thing that they can think of as the top priority for passengers. So Tricia, what would you say that passengers want from the transport network?
Right now, well,
yeah,
it's really hard. I'm gonna give you three because I can't possibly give you one. But I think it's reliable, it's safe, and it's clean.
Okay, and David?
think I'll have to add value to money to that one. I think this idea, particularly thinking about the commuter market, it's interesting. We're doing some work at the moment, which is not published, but nearly 80% of people who have a choice about where they go to in terms of their workplace are saying that they will come back to commuting at some point, and they have quite a say in that with their employer, which is interesting. So I think good value for money through a ticketing offer that actually reflects demand and need in the future.
Thank you. Andrew.
I think if we had to do one key single ask, it would be reliability, punctuality, that a service that people can rely upon. That was, of course, the underlying problem in the May 18 timetable. They couldn't rely upon it, couldn't run a system. That led to the Blake-Jones review. And ultimately, it's about having a quality of offer, a choice that will help people back onto the railways and onto our buses.
Thank you. And Judith.
Well, all of the above, really. But I think looking at the chat, people haven't forgotten just how poor the service was before COVID. People absolutely rammed together like sardines. Anyone with mental health issues, absolutely terrified about using trains in, that memory still exists. So I think running through all of the issues about reliability, it's about safety. And obviously with the COVID lens on now, but safety means being able to keep your distance from people. So I think that's a massive challenge for the transport industry when we start getting more people using the service, but that's got to be absolutely paramount at the moment.
Thank you. I'm looking through the chat at the moment right now. It looks like a huge appetite at the moment right now for some form of fares reform, and we're talking whether that's part-time season tickets, whether that is a London-style metro system or a fixed price per journey. So what are people's views on the panel on fares reform and what we should be looking at doing for the future and bringing fares into the 21st century, I suppose? And I'll start off with David first for that.
Salim. There's been a lot of talk in the North about an integrated modal, pan-northern smart type product, and I think that ambition is great. I think it needs to be delivered, or something needs to be delivered, and if it can be a little bit controversial, maybe we may want to concentrate first of all maybe on a mode and maybe start with rail. It could be bus, but you could start with rail, so people can see this thing in action. And I think the ambition is great, but I think we need to start delivering some of this. And hearing Tricia say there that Northern have rolled out, and as a bus operators, different types of products to incentivise people back onto transport. I think that's great. I think we just need to demonstrate how it can work, and I think we do desperately need to understand. And I keep coming back to commuters. I think the leisure market will bounce back a bit sooner and easier than the commuter market, because I think there's more certainty there when things start to reopen. But I think the commuter market and getting those products absolutely right is going to be critical in getting people back in so the economy can get going again, and equally getting some money back into the Treasury coffers as well, getting that balance right. So the discounts on new flexible season products, ticket bundles, are going to be absolutely tuned right so that the passenger feels they're getting the bigger slice of the cake, but so do the Treasury at the same time.
Thanks, David. And Judith, all those people coming into Leeds and going out of Leeds as well. I mean, what is it that those people will want in the future now?
Well, I was actually going to say, thinking about how we emerge from where we are, we have to make sure that we're attractive to new users as well as people who have already used the network. And I want to commend the work that WICA, West Yorkshire, have been doing across the piece on fares for young people. And I think we need to make it a real, the reality that you don't actually need to have a car to be able to successfully get around our region and around the North generally. And that's our ambition about Transport for the North, is that you can live in one place, work in another, have your leisure activity in another, all connected up by transport that's fit for the 21st century and into the future. But I think we have to really work hard to attract new audiences, and I would just like to look at that accessibility for young people, so their first ambition isn't to buy a car, which I'm afraid is the sad reality for too many young people, that they feel to be able to fulfill all of their needs, that having a car is an essential requirement. And I think it's working around that. and really looking at the barriers, you know, why people don't use public transport. What is it about the first and last mile that once you get into a car, just even to go that short journey, actually you're more likely to stay in the car because of weather, you know, because of things on the radio or whatever it is. And it's looking at everything in the round, I think, that will help us to move forward and really develop the transport system that is fit for purpose, particularly, as I said earlier, really addressing the needs and the serious needs around climate emergency, and how we've got to really look at our collective love affair with the car, and how we can safely make sure that people have alternatives and can take them up when the time is right.
Okay, thank you, Judith. I'm going to move on in a different direction now, and I'll go to Andrew first. So how important is high-speed rail to the success of the North in the long term and meeting the needs of passengers in the future?
Well, I think high-speed rail is going to be extremely important. And I was the minister who got the phase 1 bill through the House. So I think my record on that is reasonably well known. I think that HS2 is the key part of injecting long-term capacity into our rail network. When you think we haven't built a railway line, when we started this discussion, haven't built a railway line north of London in England since the reign of Queen Victoria. Look at the way the economy has changed, the population has changed, things had to move. So put more capacity into the marketplace. Then the consequential decision was, okay, let's use new technology, which is high-speed rail rather than conventional rail. So we should view HS2, Northern Powerhouse Rail, whatever we're going to call these, as effectively motorways for trains connecting our cities. And that capacity, connectivity is absolutely fundamental. We have made a decision to proceed. I think there's still a case, I'm looking at the chat earlier, from Paul H. What pressure is being applied to ensure the eastern leg is delivered? Well, I asked about that at Prime Minister's questions last week, and we got a very positive reply. But it is right to keep the pressure up, and there is a role for MPs from the East Midlands, South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire and beyond to make sure that the government keeps that promise and also maximises the benefits that will flow from it. We all have a role to play in keeping the pressure up, but we are already on it as well.
Thank you, Andrew. And I suppose, seeing as I'm from West Yorkshire, I think I'm going to go to Judith, because I'm sure she'll have a view on the eastern leg of HS2 and high-speed rail generally as well.
Yeah, I do. I think one of the biggest mistakes we made in early days was referring to this as a project about speed. It's far more about connectivity, about joining up and investing in the infrastructure, as Andrew said, that has, you know, we've existed since Queen Victoria's day, and it's about looking at investment going forward the next 150 years, and not looking at the short term in terms of the cost around it. I actually believe that in terms of transformational impact in terms of our economy, I think we should have given priority to HS2 East. The numbers of people that the line serves are far greater than the West. This isn't a competition, I have to say. We need both. We need both, and I think we need to get over whatever it is that government feels is holding back the East. And I think Andrew's question last week was very helpful, and we're very much promoting the fact that we don't have to wait for the link from Birmingham to Yorkshire. We can start in Yorkshire. What we feel very strongly is that HS2 is absolutely vital in terms of linking up with the Northern Powerhouse Rail, the west to east. You can't have one without the other. It just doesn't make any sense. And all of the integrated engineering around that makes sense. But, you know, we're talking about 13 million people that will benefit from HS2 East. 20% of the UK's population, larger than Greater London or the entire economy of Denmark. And the cost of delaying this project to Leeds City region is around every year, it's about 1.7 billion. This is a an issue that needs resolving and needs resolving quickly, and what business say to us is that they want the certainty that it is going to go ahead. They recognise that it might not be in the time frame immediately that they need, but it's the certainty that leads to the confidence. And when we got that commitment to doing the why, the impact on business in Leeds was absolutely phenomenal, and the inquiries were still getting inquiries of people, businesses wanting to relocate and move to West Yorkshire. So, we just need to get on with it. And there was an interesting debate in the House of Lords last week trying to link the western leg to the eastern leg. I know that Grant Shapps is trying to find a way of creating more capacity to getting bills through Parliament. We need to support that, and we need to get on with it so that we can actually recognise. And I'm really pleased to say that there is a real collaboration, cross-party, working from Birmingham through the East Midlands, South Yorkshire, into West Yorkshire, but also beyond up to the northeast, and that route up to Scotland as well. And there is a huge amount of lobbying going on. Look at the Connecting Britain website, join in, and please help us to really get the message across that the eastern side of the Pennines desperately needs this investment, and it needs it really now.
Thank you for that, Judith. Right, everyone, that is all we have time for today now. The time has whizzed by. So I just want to thank Judith, Andrew, Tricia, and David for joining me today and providing some great insight for all of us. I also want to thank the audience as well for the active participation. We've had lots and lots of comments, and I can only apologise we haven't had the chance to go through all the questions on there, but we've tried to take out the themes and ask the questions around that. Although I couldn't see the audience, I could definitely feel the interest.